love bugs, welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about the Audra Winter drama on BookTok and all the controversy surrounding her new release, The Age of Scorpius. So I want to give you guys just enough of the drama to give you kind of a background of what's going on, and then jump into the meat of the video, which is going to be the editing portion. And so, I mean, you've already read the title, so you know what we're doing in this video. So this girl, Audra Winter, has built her platform on TikTok talking about her writing process. She's been working on this book, The Age of Scorpius, and the series that will follow this book for about 10 years, she said. And she is 22, so she started this as a child and has been just like adding on to it and continuing it for most of her life, really, a large portion of her life. And you can really, people really latched onto this and really supported her because, first of all, the world building sounded really cool. This is a fantasy book that is centered around like the zodiac signs, kind of acting as, I think, like kind of in the same way as the factions in Divergent. I haven't actually read the full book, so I don't know if that is accurate, but that is how I've seen it described by others. So yeah, that's kind of the premise of the world building. People were interested by that, and I think that really a large part of it was that people could see how passionate she was about this work. You can see in every one of her videos how much she loves this world, how much she is excited to be writing it and excited for people to be reading it for the first time, how much she just like truly, how much of her soul is in this story, and that really comes across, and it's really beautiful to see. And so I think that a lot of people were really excited to support her and to read the book because you can feel how much passion went into it. And also something that has been really helpful for her, I think, is that she has this like team of artists behind her who have made some really incredible work. So all of the art, all of the promotional material for this book was incredible, was great. And so the book dropped with thousands of pre-orders, with a really impressive amount of pre-orders, especially for someone who is doing all their own marketing, who is not being traditionally published, a young woman doing this on her own, basically for the first time with a debut novel. Really impressive, thousands of pre-orders. And all of the reviews were bad. Basically, the consensus was that it was extremely poorly written, that there were grammatical errors. There were some things that were different in the Kindle version versus the print version. So there were errors that were fixed in one and not fixed in the other, and vice versa. And some, it was just a really messy release, and people were not happy about it, and people have been critical about it. And from what I've seen, I think that a lot of the response has been in good faith. People really genuinely trying to critique the book, but also being frustrated that they had been led, to be so hyped up for this book when it wasn't the quality that was promised. I mean, I think that that's kind of the majority of the drama, is just that she promoted this book extremely well, got an extremely large number of pre-orders, and then the book was not good. So in response to that, she has come out and said in recent days that she's going to be doing a second printing, that it's going to go undergo extreme, like major revisions, and will be a completely different book by the time it is republished in, I think, December. A lot of the response to that I've been seeing is that that's not enough time to restructure and rewrite the book in the way that it needs to be. We will withhold our judgment because we are going to go through the first chapter together as if we're the editors, and we'll see. We'll see how much time we think she needs by the end of the video. The drama surrounding that I've seen is that this new print, the reprint, is going to be a special edition, so the price has gone up by like $10, and she's justified this by saying, of course, that like it's a large amount of work that's going to be going into it. I think that that's kind of a moot point because, I mean, it's a book, it's the exact amount of work that you should have put into the first print. So, but also that it's going to have more art, it's going to have sprayed edges, it's going to have a nice cover. All of that stuff I think is so extraneous. We don't need any of that. And I think, it's been kind of this trend that like every single book gets a special edition, and I've always thought that was kind of annoying, but it's especially annoying in this case when it's a book that most of people in the audience either have not read or have read and didn't like. So why would they want a special edition? I think that this is really like putting the cart before the horse. Like, you don't even have a product yet. It doesn't need to be pretty. We don't need to be paying all these artists. So, like, it is so good that the book has such beautiful art, and it is really impressive that it is, such an endeavor, and that there are so many people working on this and making it so beautiful. But the book itself is what you're selling, so the book has to be good before anything else. That's my opinion anyway. And it's kind of been my long held, controversial, and frankly mean opinion that I don't think it's that impressive whenever people say, like, oh, this person did this at 16, unless you're a prodigy, which is very rarely the case. I think that it usually just indicates that you did it before you were ready. So like this author talking about how she's been working on this book since she was like for 10 years, being 22 years old now. It's like I don't find that impressive because I don't find 12-year-olds writing impressive, and that's so mean, and I'm so sorry. But like that is just kind of the mindset that I have going into this, is that this feels like, and it feels like the priorities of this endeavor are completely misplaced, and the credentials that she's touting to sell this book don't even really make sense. So I mean, that's my opinion on the matter, but that's not why we came here today to this channel. We came here today to do an edit of the first chapter. So the reason that I'm doing this is because with this second print in mind, she has said on her TikTok that she's going to be sourcing an editor and a copy editor from the fans. She's going to be like holding auditions for it where you edit the first chapter and send it into her, and she's going to choose an editor, which I think is a little bit funny. I think that sourcing an editor from your fans is a bad idea. It reminds me a little bit of like whenever I ask my mom to proofread my essays. She reads the whole thing and tells me that it's the most professional, put together, well-rounded, well-written piece of writing she's ever read in her life, and it should be professionally published. Versus like if I ask my professor to edit my essay, then they'll have pages and pages of revisions that I can do. So it's like, sourcing an editor from people who are already endeared to you, who already have kind of a love for this world, a love for you as a writer, versus asking somebody who has a blank slate, who doesn't have any stake in the game. Um, yeah, I mean, I just think that that's going to be a little bit of an issue. So I like editing. I think it's fun. I know a lot of people on booktok are like planning to be writers or would like to be writers in the future, are currently working on projects. So I think that this could be productive for all of us. We can go through this and kind of talk about what works and what doesn't work. And it's good for me to exercise my writing and editing skills. Hopefully, it's good for everybody who's watching who wants to exercise their writing and editing skills. And I think that we can kind of have a good time with it. It'll be a little bit more productive than, yeah, I've seen a lot of the videos about this girl and about this book that are just kind of, I feel like there's a little bit of a dog pile going on, and I don't want to contribute to that. I want to do something a little bit more active, a little bit more productive. So hopefully this is helpful. So I guess to clarify, I don't really intend for this video to make it to the author or for these edits to make it to the author. Just kind of doing this for fun and like to talk about editing and writing with my besties on my YouTube channel. Um, so yeah, I mean, if she does happen to come across this video, she's obviously welcome to take or leave any of the suggestions that I make. Uh, I don't plan to send it in to her auditions for editor, but if she really likes the the edits that I make, then hey. And yeah, just one more disclaimer, then we'll get started. These are going to be edits, so I'm not trying to say like, oh, my edits are going to be so much better than what she's already written. I'm such a better writer than her. This was garbage and now my version is perfect. This is an editing phase. This is still something that, like, if I were acting as her editor and I sent this back to her, I would still want her to revise it after this. It's not a final draft. We're just doing another step in the editing process. So just to say that, if our edits that I'm making right now are dog shit, then that's okay. how do I screen record? So I've already read the first chapter, so I know a little bit of what we're going to learn in the first chapter. I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of it because I wanted, going into this, I wanted to leave as much of the original text as I could because this is a late stage edit. I think that you need to preserve as much as you can. We don't have that much time before the book is going to print again, but I do have some major structural revision that I think would help this book a lot. So I'm going to tell you the premise and then I'm going to kind of go through it. So the overview of the first chapter, our main character, whose name I don't know because it's not mentioned in the first chapter, is looking at this artifact that she has been researching, which contradicts the historical record put forward by, I guess, the overarching government of this place. It's not really clear where it comes from, but she's looking at this artifact which is contrary to that historical record, and it seems that her goal will be to correct that record, and some soldiers from the desert land have spotted her. So I'm going to do a dramatic reading first, and then we'll talk about it. We can go maybe like paragraph or 2 paragraphs at a time. Let's see. Someone had rewritten the history of Conviction Woods, the cursed forest I call home. Despite all the text describing Conviction Woods as eternally inhabitable, there were hundreds of wartime artifacts scattered amongst the forest grounds. The records had been altered to hide the truth of Gardean's last war, a truth that allowed the woods to protect those mysteriously meant to survive beyond its boundaries. I lingered on the edge of the farthest northern reach of Conviction Woods. Before me stood a crumpled and dilapidated stone arch, old runic etched across its surface, worn away by the structure returning to the earth. A few fallen stones lay scattered across the surrounding ground, freezing into the dirt as ancient remains conjoined with snow and soil. Beyond the arch's gaping Beyond the arch's gaping mouth laid Assiduous's barren territory. Okay, so that is our opening of the story. Let's start with the first paragraph. Someone had rewritten the history of Conviction Woods, the cursed forest I call home. I'm going to go ahead and delete the cursed forest I call home. This is a YA book, which we should keep in mind. So that's something that I'm kind of thinking about with these revisions also, is that it's a YA book. It's for a young audience. I'm thinking it should be kind of punchy, kind of dynamic. There should be a sense of motion in all the words, like there should be a force behind it. I feel like even in a YA book that sounds very juvenile, it's really like spelling out the information that I think could be delivered a lot smoother later on in a different way. Because also like she's coming from Conviction Woods, so we know that she has some kind of connection to it. It's really not necessary to spell it out in such detail. Especially for information that should become obvious as the story goes on. So I think that someone had rewritten the history of Conviction Woods, period, is a really strong hook. Despite all the text describing Conviction Woods as eternally inhabitable, there were hundreds of wartime artifacts scattered amongst the forest grounds. Okay, first of all, it's repetitive. We don't need the name Conviction Woods twice, so I'm going to go ahead and change it to it. Despite all the text describing it as eternally inhabitable. I don't know what she means here with inhabitable, because I don't know why wartime artifacts would make something not inhabitable. It sounds like it sounds like there are people there, so I don't know, but also they're artifacts, so maybe there's not people there but it's also eternally inhabitable. So you would think that it doesn't matter at what point the people came because it's always been that way. You know what? I bet she means uninhabitable. Does that make more sense? Despite all the text describing it as eternally uninhabitable, there were hundreds of wartime artifacts scattered amongst the forest grounds. Not really. A truth that allowed the woods to protect those mysteriously meant to survive beyond its boundary. Okay, so it is uninhabitable. We're right. Yeah, okay, so it is uninhabitable because it is inhabitable because there are people there. Okay, so, okay, I think that this paragraph is not really telling us very much. I just feel like we get the same information, but it's also no information because we know that there was some kind of war, but that it has been altered in the histories, and that there is a place where people mysteriously survive. It's just not that much to grasp, and it's really kind of vague. So I think that we can cut out a lot of this. So despite all the text describing it as eternally uninhabitable, there were hundreds of wartime artifacts scattered among the forest grounds. Honestly, I think we should lose that sentence because I think it's confusing. Because we have this eternally one-way artifacts, uninhabitable versus inhabitable is what you actually wrote. I think that we just need to scrap the sentence. Okay, someone had rewritten the history of Conviction Woods. The records had been altered. That's repetitive, so we need to change that. The records have been altered to hide the truth of Gardean's last war. What if we just did, someone had rewritten the history of Conviction Woods? No way. Someone had rewritten the history of Conviction Woods to hide the truth of Gardean's last war, a truth that allowed the woods to protect those mysteriously meant to survive beyond its boundaries. I think that's pretty good. I think we just butchered that paragraph into a sentence. I still do think that someone had rewritten the history of Conviction Woods. I think that's a strong opener as like a little short sentence by itself because it's a hook. It tells you a little bit of information. It's interesting. There's enough that you can kind of question what's going on. It's going to get the attention of the young audience, but it's still like kind of punchy. Um, but I think that this works. I think that this works. Someone had rewritten the history of Conviction Woods to hide the truth of Gardean's last war, a truth that allowed the woods to protect those mysteriously meant to survive beyond its boundaries. The last part of that sentence is, I think, a little bit messy, but I think that this is overall decent. I think we've done a pretty good, this is the first round of editing, I think we've done pretty well. To hide the truth of Gardean's last war. We could end the sentence there. That's not period. To protect those mysteriously meant to survive beyond its boundaries. Yeah, I think that we can end the sentence there. And then we retain that punchiness of the opening. Let's see. Someone had rewritten the history of Conviction Woods to hide the truth of Gardean's last war. I still like just the first part better, but I think we're on the right track. I think we can, this is what I mean by like this round of this editing that I'm doing right now would not be a final round because I think that you can still workshop this a lot. This is like not at all a final version, but I think we're getting there. I think we're getting somewhere with this. Let's move on to the next paragraph before we spend an hour on the first. I lingered on the edge of the farthest northern reach of Conviction Woods. I know the name of it. You've actually said it so many times within these couple sentences. I remember. I'm going to change this a little bit. Delete my own suggestion of the woods' farthest northern reach. I think that's good. I lingered on the edge of the woods' farthest northern reach. Oops, forgot to get rid of this of. Yeah, this is something that one of my professors in undergrad talked about is the like use of the word of kind of makes something kind of um, emphatic, but also kind of archaizing. Say like the northern reach of the Conviction Woods. It gives it a lot. It gives it a place of emphasis in the sentence, being at the very end. It gives it this like enhanced significance with this like of coming before it, and sometimes that's too much. And so I think that just rearranging the wording here, I think makes it flow a lot better. So I lingered on the edge of the woods' farthest reach versus I lingered on the edge of the farthest reach of the woods. It's a lot more words. It takes longer to get through. It's a little bit more clunky. And I think that what we've done is really like slimmed it down and gotten it down to the meat of what the sentence is supposed to say in a simpler way. So before me stood a crumpled and dilapidated stone arch, old runic etched. Why can I not read? Crumpled and dilapidated in this context, I think really mean the same thing. So we just need one. And that's again keeping in mind the like kind of the audience, trying to make this a little bit, give it a little bit more momentum for a YA book. I think that we can't do a comma here because I don't know what runic is. So, okay, my formatting is a little bit fucked up. Because I don't know what runic is as the reader. Obviously, I can infer that it is the language that it's written in, but just saying old runic etched across the surface, I think it doesn't really work for the first time we're being introduced to this. So before me stood a dilapidated stone arch with old runic etched across the surface. I think that flows better. Something about the comma just isn't working for me. With old runic etched across the surface, worn away by the structure returning to the earth. Fine. Fallen stones lay scattered across the surrounding ground, freezing into the dirt as ancient remnants conjoined with snow and soil. Something about these sentences is that they're like really wordy and kind of difficult to say. And that's also another thing. I used to work at the writing center at my university, and something that we would always do is read out loud with the person whose essay we were editing, because it really does help you to kind of realize what is flowing and what is not. If you're stumbling over the words a lot and it's just kind of difficult to put the words together and like say them fluidly, it is indicative that there's an issue. So I think that it could just be that I'm not reading well out loud right now, but I think that the difficulty I'm experiencing is a little bit indicative that's just the sentences are clunky. So a few fallen stones lay scattered across the surrounding ground, freezing into the dirt as ancient remnants conjoined with snow and soil. We just said that it's returning to the earth, so I don't think that we need to say this again. But if we wanted to, a few fallen stones lay scattered across the surrounding ground, freezing into the dirt as ancient remnants conjoined with snow and soil. This is the same thing as freezing into the dirt. So I think we don't need it. You could just keep the ancient remnants part. Ancient remnants, I think, is a weird way to say it, frankly. Conjoined, I don't think is the word that we're looking for here. Conjoin, when I think of something, like being reclaimed by the earth, the way that ruins are reclaimed by like moss and stuff, the word isn't conjoined that I'm going with, because conjoined is so mechanical, conjoined is so controlled. I don't think it's the right word here. I think you could say ancient ruins like being reclaimed by snow and soil. I think that would be fine. It is also remnants. Remnants, I don't think it's a good word either. Ancient remains, ancient remnants being swallowed by snow and soil. I think that's fine. But conjoined, I don't like. I think it's too intentional. I don't know if that makes sense. So we're going to delete that. A few fallen stones lay scattered across the surrounding ground, freezing into the dirt. Yeah, that's fine. Again, I don't think it's perfect, but we're getting there. I'm trying to move a little faster also because it's been 20 minutes since I started and we've done 1.5 paragraphs. So beyond the arches, gaping mouth laid assiduous barren territory. A pet peeve for me, you don't need this extra S. I just don't really like S at the end of an S apostrophe, but I digress. Let's put that together and see if it makes sense. I lingered on the edge of the wood's farthest northern reach. No, let's say northernmost. Wood's northernmost reach. Before me stood a dilapidated stone arch with old runic etched across the surface, worn away by the structure returning to the earth. I don't like returning to the earth. Because it isn't because of the structure returning to the earth. If it's up above the ground level, it would be worn away by okay, I don't want to add anything really because I don't want it to be my writing instead of her writing, but I'm going to do it in this case. Worn away by centuries of wind and exposure, something like that. I think because it doesn't have to be what she says. Like that doesn't have to be a true edit, but I just think that structure returning to the earth doesn't work here, and this being a placeholder for something that could work. Because it doesn't make sense if we're talking about up high on the arch. That's not the part that's returning to the earth. That's not the part that's on the ground. It would be, wind and sun, and that would be what is causing the engraving to be worn away. So you understand, you're with me, right? Okay, I lingered on the edge of the wood's northernmost reach. Before me stood a dilapidated stone arch with old runic etched across the surface, worn away by centuries of wind and exposure. A few fallen stones lay scattered across the surrounding ground, freezing into the dirt. See, the thing is that also we're getting a repetition in the sentence structure. So we have with this sentence that starts with before me, we have the like sentence, comma, an extra clause, and then we have the same thing in this following sentence. A few fallen stones lay scattered across the surrounding ground, comma, clause. And it's fine, but it is like right after each other, and so I think it comes across a little bit repetitive. A few fallen stones lay scattered across the surrounding ground, freezing into the dirt. I'm gonna leave it. I feel like I'm being really nitpicky, and like that is what line editing is just like nitpicking, but it's not causing us immense problems, so I think we need to move on for the sake of also this video not being an hour long. Beyond the arch's gaping mouth laid Assidius's barren territory. I think that's fine, whatever. Assidius's barren territory, and, oh sorry, I'm gonna do the dramatic reading first. Assidius's barren territory and its occupants who didn't want me meandering on their land. It was too late for me to trace the rest of the runic on the arch. I'd only recorded the lower carvings. Fuck! Is it me, guys? Is it me? Only recorded the lower carvings. I'd only recorded the lower carvings, my arms too short to reach the tallest stones. I let my eyes linger on the writing to try to memorize the patterns. The clock ticked as enemies neared, and while my feet drew me away from the arch, my mind bent around the writing. Okay, so we're getting also a little bit more of the world building. We know that there are enemies around her, and she's in a location that she cannot stay in. So we're getting a little bit, we should be getting a little bit more of a sense of tension here. We should be getting a little bit more that she is having to do this under pressure. So yeah, there is obviously the repetition of the Assidius's barren territory, but this is intentional, so I'm going to leave it. Assidius's barren territory, don't need another comma, and its occupant. We could, for the sake of being quirky, do a ... What do we think about that? Assidius's barren territory and its occupants. I think it works. I think it's fun. Who didn't want me meandering on their land. Meandering, because like I just said, this is going to be, she's under pressure, she's doing something with enemies approaching. Meandering does not give us that sense at all. So we'll say encroaching. Oops, if I knew how to spell. Encroaching on their land. Encroaching, maybe trespassing even. There's something about this sentence, I'm having a little bit of a hard time pinning it down. Maybe it's that didn't want isn't strong enough. We can do something crazy, Bull. I know I said I wasn't gonna write anything, but we could do something crazy and be like, who would kill me for encroaching on their land? I feel like that's obviously taking liberties that I don't really think it's my place as not even the editor to take, but I feel like that is... Oh, there already was a me. Let's delete that then. Who would kill me for encroaching on their land? I think that's kind of good. I mean, let's see. Assidius's barren territory and its occupants who would kill me for encroaching on their land. I think that kind of gets the vibe across better. Again, I don't think it's perfect. I think we can still workshop it a lot, but I think that we're getting closer. I don't think we need that sentence. Not to be really merciless, but I think that this is kind of, I just don't think we need it, especially since she's going to tell us in the next sentence basically the same thing. I'd only recorded so here's where we are. Its occupants who would kill me for encroaching on their land. I'd only recorded the lower carvings. My arms too short to reach the tallest ones. She's so not like other girls. I think that the issue being her arms being short takes away from the timeliness of this, because if she's just, this is kind of giving the impression that she has all the time in the world, she just can't physically get up to the height of the tallest ones, when I think the issue that is trying to be communicated is that there are people coming who will not take kindly to her being there. So I think I'd only, like, if we said, like, I'd only just recorded the lower carvings, but time was running out, something like that. But it was too, oh, we can just change it, yeah. But it was too late for me to trace the rest, period. So then we're kind of combining the sentence before it and this one to make it a little bit more effective. I'd only just recorded the lower carvings, but it was too late for me to trace the rest. Also the like of the runic and the arch, which we have currently scratched out, so repetitive because the entire last paragraph was about the runic on the arch. We know it's runic on the arch. I let my eyes linger on the writing to try to memorize its patterns. Linger again, we're getting this sense of this, she has time, we're doing something very slowly, very methodically. I don't think that's the vibe that we're trying to give off. Like, scanned the writing with my eyes. I searched the writing with my eye. I tried to memorize the writing. Let's just do that. I tried to memorize the patterns. So what we're trying to communicate is that she is running out of time to record down the rest of what she is seeing, but she's trying to see as much of it as she can so that she can copy it down later. So let's see, I tried to memorize the patterns as enemies neared. The remaining patterns as enemies neared. And while my feet drew me from the arch, my mind bent around the writing. We don't need writing again because we just had it. Oh wait, I actually deleted writing, so we don't have it. Let's see where the paragraph is now. It's kind of hard for me to see. Assidious is barren territory, and its occupants, who would kill me for encroaching on their land. I'd only just recorded the lower carvings, but it was too late for me to trace the rest. I tried to memorize the remaining patterns as enemies neared, and while my feet drew me away from the arch, my mind bent around the writing. I think that's good. I think that's an improvement. I think that's a marked improvement. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's a good improvement. I feel like patterns, I don't know, because are we referring to, are they patterns or are they writing? I feel like they can't really be both. I guess it's fine. I'll just put I'll put patterns in like a little highlight because I think it does need a different word, but I don't know it at this moment, and we gotta move on. We've only done one page. Stop. That's impossible. I don't know if we're gonna make it through this whole chapter, guys. Arch's inscriptions must have been centuries old. I'd never, in any of my studies, seen a combination of Union languages on artifact. Mixing two Union languages was almost unfathomable to modern-day society. Besides our common tongue, Gordean prioritized the separation of the four unions. Conviction, assiduous, autarkic, societal, in their own societies and territories. Even more intriguing, the arch dated back to a war where conviction and assiduous were enemies. A combination of the two languages was further proof that Gardean's recorded history was wrong. Okay, so this one's going to be a little bit of a doozy. See, here's the thing. She says the arch's inscriptions must have been centuries old, but then dates it later and says that she knows which war it was happening in. So you've got to be, you can't have both. It must be X amount of time versus I know exactly when this was written, are two different things. So let's change it. The arch dated back to X war. I'd never in any of my studies seen a combination of Union languages on an artifact. No, let's do, instead of this, let's do the arch, combined Union languages. Oh, am I not on suggesting? The arch used a combination of Union languages, mixing two Union languages, mixing two, this is repetitive, so mixing two is almost unfathomable to modern day society. Modern day, does that need to be hyphenated? Maybe I'm stupid. Mixing two is almost unfathomable to modern day society. But the thing is that this isn't modern society, so I don't know why it matters. Mixing two is almost unfathomable. I don't want to use the word society because one of them is called societal. So into their own territories. maybe cultures. Yeah, into their own cultures and territories. Maybe cultures is not the right word, but I don't know. That's a world building question. Even more intriguing, the arch dated back to a war where conviction and assiduous were enemies, a combination. Oh my god. Okay. The arch used a combination of Union languages. Just say which was almost unfathomable. Which was unprecedented. Okay, that's not how you spell it. Besides our common tongue, I feel like the common tongue really undercuts the idea that these civilizations are separate from each other. So I feel like if it does exist, fine, but now is not the time to mention it. So just delete that. Even more intriguing, the arch dated back to a war. I think that we shouldn't call it a war. It should have a name. And also, a war where the where here is very colloquial. It's very like spoken American English, and it doesn't really work for this like written a little bit more formal, a little bit more um, archaic because it's fantasy. It's got like a little bit of a charged tone to it. So even more intriguing, the arch dated back to, I think it should have a name, to uh, X War, um, in which, well, just saying that there were enemies, I think is not really that strong. So I think we should, I don't want to take liberties with the story, but in which, like, conviction attacked Assidius or something. Does one instance of shared language prove that the entire written history is wrong? I don't think so. So I think we have to start softer. A combination of the two languages suggested a collaboration that was like suggested a collaboration that was unseen in the historical record, that was something like that. Yeah. Then maybe we can say, like, to me this was further proof. Let's see where that that paragraph took a lot of damage. Let's see. I think it still needs work. I think, let's see. The arch used a combination of Union languages. But did it, or did it use assiduous and conviction? That's what it sounds like. So I think that she maybe said this just to introduce the idea of the Union, but I don't think that really is a great place for it. I used both assiduous and conviction language, which was unprecedented. Even more intriguing, the arch dated back to X War, in which conviction attacked assiduous. A combination of the two languages suggested a collaboration that was unseen in the historical record. To me, this was further proof that Gardean's recorded history was inaccurate. Yeah, I think this second to last sentence isn't very good, but we should move on. I had spent months scouring over records, libraries, and books to pinpoint the location of the arch as soon as I spotted it mentioned in a 300-year-old document. My research eventually revealed that the arch was placed in Assyrian, I guess that's what you would call the language, in the Assyrian territory on the edges of the woods at the border, though that could have spanned hundreds of miles from the eastern part to the hub. Grenadans, wow, this is a long sentence. Grenadans shared centralized city to the coastline of the continent. To trace the steps of ancient battles to the coordinates of the arch was a tedious process, requiring my nose to be stuck in at least 24 scrolls within the past couple of months. Okay. Wow. Okay. Here we go. Okay. I had spent months scouring over records, libraries, and books. Those are all different like things to scour. I feel like those are all different. You scour those things in different ways. I feel like putting them together in a sentence like this is a little bit strange. I had spent months scouring over books. scouring the records, I think. Because, like, records could be any form of recorded history. Libraries are buildings, and books are books. So I think that it's just like it's three different materials, really. So I feel like putting them in this list, I think it's a little bit strange. Um, let's just do this. I had spent months scouring over the records to pinpoint the location of the arch. As soon as I spotted it mentioned in a 300-year-old document. What 300-year-old document? That tells me nothing. So I think, first of all, I feel like we can change up the order. We can put this at the beginning. So as soon as I spotted it mentioned, sorry, I'm like vibrating you guys with my typing, in X, I think it should have a name. I as soon as I spotted it mentioned in X, I spotted it mentioned in X, I scoured the records to pinpoint its location. She talks about the time later in the paragraph, right? So as soon as I spotted it mentioned in whatever book, I scoured the records to pinpoint its location. My research eventually revealed that the arch was placed. We could do like an M dash here. I think that would be a little bit of a harsher break between these two thoughts. So my research eventually revealed, I don't think we need. My research revealed that the arch was placed in a city and territory on the edges of the woods at the border. I feel like the woods probably are the border, right? So maybe we don't need at the border, but I mean, again, that's a world building question. So revealed at the edges of the woods, M dash, though that could have spanned hundreds of miles from the eastern part of the hub to the coastline of the continent. Coastline of the continent, girl, I know how continents work. I know that the coastline is probably the edge of the continent, although, maybe not. The arch was placed in a city and territory on the edges of the woods, though that spanned, like this dividing line that she's talking about. The arch was placed in a city and territory on the edges of the woods, though that spanned hundreds of miles from the hub in the east, I want to say. From the hub, yeah, in the east to the western coastline. Something like that. I assume that's where the coastline is if we're talking east and west. My research revealed that the arch was placed in a city and territory on the edges of the woods. On the edges, the woods only have one edge, to my knowledge. My research revealed that the arch was placed in a city and territory on the edge of the woods, though that spanned hundreds of miles from the hub, Guardian's shared centralized city in the east, to the western coastline. I think that works better. Gardean's shared centralized city. I mean, it is world building, so it is a little bit necessary, but it is really shoehorned in there. So maybe let's think like, could have spanned Gardean's shared centralized city. We can just say central city, right? Shared city, even, dare I say. Capital city seems like what it is. Let's say capital city. To trace the steps of ancient battles to the coordinates of the arch was a tedious process, requiring my nose to be stuck in at least 24 scrolls within the past couple of months. I'm gonna be honest, reading 24 scrolls in a couple of months doesn't sound that impressive. To trace the steps of ancient battles to the coordinates of the arch was a tedious process, requiring my nose to be stuck in at least 24 scrolls within the past couple of months. I actually think that's fine. I think that kind of works. Let's see. To trace the steps of ancient battles to the coordinates of the arch. I mean, that is a word soup. Was a tedious process, requiring my nose to be stuck in at least 24 scrolls within the past couple of months. Let's just say requiring months of work. As soon as I spotted it mentioned in X, I scoured the records to pinpoint its location. My research revealed that the arch was placed in a city and territory on the edge of the woods, though that spanned hundreds of miles from the hub, From the hub, Guardians shared capital city in the east to the western coastline. To trace the steps of ancient battles to the coordinates of the arch was a tedious process requiring months of work. To trace the steps. I know what it means, but I just don't know if this sentence works. To trace the steps of ancient battles. To trace it. Yeah, you know what? Let's leave it. Let's move on. Deciphering the runic on the arch was my next step to decoding the true history of Conviction Woods, and the moment I finally found it, an Ascidian border patrol just had to be there. Of course. I feel like runic should be capitalized. I feel like it should be a proper noun. Deciphering the runic on the arch was my next step in decoding the true history of Conviction Woods. But the moment I finally found it, an Ascidian border patrol officer just had to be there, of course. But then in the next paragraph it says that there's two of them, so I don't know why it's singular here. But the moment I finally found it, I think that doesn't really make sense. The moment I finally arrived, the moment I finally got there, had the chance. City and Border Patrol officers. There was no doubt about it. The two of them had spotted me. I'd stepped past the 10-foot wide path into a city and territory where the arch stood, and they were headed straight toward me. I had stepped past the 10-foot wide path into a city and territory. Do I need to know that it's 10 feet wide? That's actually crazy wide for a path to be. Are we like, I think that what we want to say is that she stepped over some kind of border, not that she stepped past a path. That doesn't really make sense. I'd stepped past the like border marker. I'd stepped past the border into a city and territory where the arch stood, and they were headed. Well, I already know that the arch is in a city and territory because you already told me that. So, and they were headed straight towards me. Well, I actually feel like we don't need this sentence at all. I actually feel like, what if I just did that? There was no doubt about it. The two of them had spotted me. Yeah, because I know why they're mad at her, because she's in a city and territory. And she told us that the arch was in a city and territory. I backed up into Conviction Woods, safely passing beyond the aura of protection. This is another instance of the like of phenomenon that I was talking about. So like I think protective aura works better here because it just kind of takes away this like intensity of it, because we're not actually talking about anything that intense, and this of is kind of acting as an intensifier. So I think that it makes it more of a description than a matter of intensity. Faint shimmering aura, okay, word aura again. A faint shimmering, let's do this. A faint shimmering gold, green, and silver light flickered. I don't think we need a. Faint shimmering gold, green, and silver light flickered and shifted around the lanterns as I settled into Conviction's territory on the opposite side of the trail. Again, I don't think she means trail. I think she means border. On the opposite side of the border. What if I ever learned how to spell? Although there was a remarkably visible Although it was a remarkably visible barrier, many Ascidians, especially new recruits, were stupid enough to break through it, no matter how many times their Stellarium higher-ups warned them. Okay, Stellarium, I'm assuming, is something with the, like, because it's a zodiac world, so that's fun. We're integrating that world building. Look at us. Okay. I backed up into Conviction Woods, safely passing beyond the protective aura set on the trees. Faint shimmering gold, green, and silver light. Let's do lights. Although it was a remarkably visible barrier, many Ascidians, especially new recruits, were stupid enough to try to break through it, no matter how many times their Stellarium higher-ups warned them against it. And then I also think, what was I thinking? Although it was a remarkably visible, I don't think is good, because, like, I mean, I can see a door and still walk through it. It being visible doesn't really stop people from crossing it. So I think if we said like it was an imposing border, imposing barrier, that would give us a little bit more of the sense that we're going for. Although it was an imposing barrier, many Ascidians, especially new recruits, were stupid enough to break through it, no matter how many times their Solarium higher-ups warned them against it. Yeah, I think that works. I also think, like, how does she know that the higher-ups are warning them if she doesn't interact with them? But that's a problem for a later day. I have to leave in 10 minutes. This has gone on forever. So I'm going to try to decide if I want to finish this because we actually have, like, a fuck ton of pages left in this chapter. And we've actually only done, guess how many pages we've done, guys? Two. Two out of like 8, I think, or 6, I don't know. So the rate is not great. Let's try to get through this dialogue. And then, yeah, let's try to get through the dialogue. Okay. The two patrollers were approaching, both wearing thick winter cloaks with fur hoods. Fine. The man wore a forest green embroidered with. What? The man wore forest green embroidered with the Ascidian emblem and Taurus glyph, while the woman flaunted an umber coat with the Virgo glyph. Okay, I was wrong about a lot of things with it. Whatever. This Virgo is fine. You saw her, didn't you? Said the Taurus man. At the arch? Fine. Yes, the Virgo woman responded. She wouldn't have had the time to run north or south on the east trail. How are you going to run north and south on an east trail? Does it not run east to west? I don't think anyone's going to be using cardinal directions in this. Also, didn't they watch? Did they not see her? You've just described it as being barren. So I would have thought that they would have physically seen her walk into the woods. She wouldn't have had time to run on the east trail. I think that's weird, but I have to leave in literally 8 minutes, so we have to move on. So she went into the conviction woods? Fine. Not a chance. She wouldn't survive. Are you sure you saw a red cloak? Again, I'm confused. Did you guys not see her? I thought that it was barren land. There is one stone arch in the way, and she's wearing red? The most visible color on the spectrum? We're gonna leave it there. we're gonna stop there because I gotta go. But this was fun. I think that we actually did make really good headway on this story. I think that I'm going to read the whole thing through to you guys. I think that we actually did a really good job editing this down. The edits look really brutal just looking at it on my computer screen, but I think it's necessary. Again, revisiting the idea that the book is going to be republished in December, I think we can do it. Did it just take me like an hour and a half to go through 2 pages? Yeah, I think that it would probably go faster if I was just sitting alone in my room doing this. It would probably go faster if I was getting paid to do this, but I'm not. So I think that it's possible. And you know what? I think that this is her job. This is her full-time job. There's nothing else going on. I think that if you work 9 to 5 every day on this, I think you can crack it out in 4 months. You can at least get a significantly better draft out in 4 months. I'm thinking, and like, does it probably need multiple rounds of revision? Yeah, but that wasn't the question. The question was, can we have a better version in 3 months? Yeah, sure, why not? I think we can do it. As if she's gonna ask me to be her editor. I think that it is possible. I think that a dedicated team that is responsive and works hard can do it. So let's read this because I have to go in 5 minutes. Someone had rewritten the history of Conviction Woods to hide the truth of Gardean's last war. I lingered on the edge of the wood's northernmost reach. Before me stood a dilapidated stone arch with old runic etched across the surface, worn away by centuries of wind and exposure. A few fallen stones lay scattered across the surrounding ground, freezing in the dirt. Beyond the arch's gaping mouth lay Ascidious's barren territory. Ascidious's barren territory, and its occupants who would kill me for encroaching on their land. I'd only just recorded the lower carvings, but it was too late for me to trace the rest. I tried to memorize the remaining patterns as enemies neared, and while my feet drew me away from the arch, my mind bent around the writing. So she's already moving away before the other part where she's moving away, but anyway. The arch used both aciduction and conviction language, which was unprecedented. Even more intriguing, the arch dated back to X War, in which conviction attacked assiduous. A combination of the two languages suggested a collaboration that was unseen in the historical record. To me, this was further proof that Gardean's recorded history was inaccurate. As soon as I spotted it mentioned in X, I scoured the records to pinpoint its location. My research revealed that the arch was placed in a city and territory on the edge of the woods, though that spanned hundreds of miles from the hub, Gardean's shared capital city, in the east to the western coastline. To trace the steps of ancient battle to the coordinates of the arch was a tedious process requiring months of work. Deciphering the runic on the arch was my next step in decoding the true history of Conviction Woods, but the moment I finally had the chance, a city and border patrol officers just had to be there, of course. There was no doubt about it, the two of them had spotted me. I backed up into Conviction Woods, safely passing beyond the protective aura set on the trees. Faint shimmering gold, green, and silver lights flickered and shifted around the lanterns as I settled into Conviction's territory on the opposite side of the border. Although it was an imposing barrier, many Ascidians, especially new recruits, were stupid enough to break through, no matter how many times their Solarian higher-ups warned them against it. Yeah, that's about as far as we got. And then the dialogue, I think we did a good job. I think that was significant improvement. I think, it still needs a little bit of improvement. I noticed this part as I was reading back through it to pinpoint its location. I feel like you might have to mention the arch again, like to pinpoint the arch's location again, because the subject gets kind of lost in the end of the paragraph above it. But overall, I think that we did make really solid improvement. And I do just kind of want to say this as kind of a message going out there is that writing is not a talent, it's a skill. It's something that you have to work at. You have to do multiple times. You have to rewrite. You have to write more. You have to do just more and more and more and get more practice with it in order to be better. And I think that, like, yeah, that sounds daunting to new writers, but it also is really encouraging because basically anybody can be a really good writer. Basically anybody can write a great book. It just takes practice and it takes drive.